'Twas the night before, and all through the house not a creature was stirring except for you, lying there in your bed, excited as all get out, because the next day would have presents. And you know what that means? Possibly video games. But which video games? The ones you had asked for? Other ones that you maybe hadn't asked for that would be awesome to get anyways, or something you'd never even heard of, or goodness forbid, a new console? The excitement was off the charts. Compared to life as an adult, yeah, any time of year, if I want something, I just buy it online, it'll be here in a few days. Now, regardless of which holidays you may or may not celebrate during the holiday season, they tend to share a lot of very similar themes. The importance of family, letting people know that you care about them, and gifts. At least when it comes to children, you cannot ignore the power of receiving presents. After all, these were some of the very limited opportunities we had to receive precious video games. I've said it before and I'll say it again. Most of us as kids just did not get as many video games back then as we do now as adults. And not to beat a dead horse, which in my defense, I would never actually beat a dead horse. An alive horse, a sick horse, I leave those horses alone. But point is, as kids, we just did not have as many resources to buy new video games. And by resources, yeah, mostly just talking about money. Kids didn't have money. Now, sure, maybe some of you grew up with parents who were either sugar daddies or sugar mamas, but what made them such sugar daddies and sugar mamas is that when those holidays came, when those birthdays came, they would let that sugar rain down, baby, getting you all sorts of games. So, either way, you're probably getting pretty excited. Something else to keep in mind when it comes to video games and us as kids is that these were the formative years of us learning that we loved video games. It wasn't just about, oh yeah, this game is pretty good. It was, oh my goodness, this is a video game. We hadn't been playing video games for nearly as long at that point because we hadn't been alive for as long as we have by this point in our life now as adults. So when I got the NHL games for my Sega Genesis, it wasn't just, oh, this is a pretty good hockey game that I can play on my Sega Genesis. No, it was, oh my goodness, this is a hockey game that I can play as a video game. That in itself was novel, besides the NHL games being the amazing games that they were. So in that way, every single game you received as a kid could have been super exciting because it was almost like a new frontier, some type of game you had never played before. For example, maybe you get something like Shinobi 3, and sure, action platformers had been around before Shinobi 3, but if you'd never played an action platformer before, it could have just blown your mind and you're like, oh my goodness, I've never played a video game like this before. Whereas now, yeah, most of us, we've played an action platformer or two. These are the kinds of things that factor into the anticipation, my goodness, the anticipation that you feel while waiting to potentially get these games. And this anticipation could last for days, weeks, months, maybe even years, I don't know, before you finally get that game you've been hoping for. And that whole time you're just thinking about what it might be like to actually own that game yourself and be able to play it. And this anticipation lasts all the way until right before you open that gift. And let me paint a quick scenario for you. So there are all the gifts. Maybe some of the gifts are for you. Maybe they're all for you. I don't know, depending on the event. And there you are, and you're sizing them all up with your eyes. Okay, that package, look at the size of it. Could a video game fit in there? Maybe it's in a really big bag and you think, maybe it's a trick. They put it in a big foofy bag, but in there hiding is a video game. Maybe some packages are right on the edge of whether you think a video game could fit in there or not. And you're like, it would be a squeeze, but maybe a video game could be in there. You get a closer look. You're like, I don't don't know, maybe it could fit in there. Then there's times where it's just a dead giveaway. You're like, yep, that's a Nintendo 64 game. The type of excitement and anticipation that you'd experience as a kid around the holidays is just something that's hard to replicate later on in life. Although, personally, I have tried. Quick little story for you. So, back in the day, and to be specific, my high school days, I had something that I would make, a music CD that I like to call 1 a.m. Dad Pisser Offers. And the idea was to put the CD in this CD player alarm clock thing I had and put it somewhere in the house where my dad would hear it, and it would start playing the song at 1 in the morning and wake him up. And as advertised, it worked. Woke him up at 1 a.m. and it pissed my dad off, and it was a lot of fun for me. So a number of years go by since I've last done this, and one year I'm coming home for the holidays, and like a lot of you, I celebrate Christmas. So in order to spice Christmas up a little bit that year, I thought, hey, you know what? What if I do a Christmas edition of the 1 a.m. Dad Pisser Offers? So I'm thinking, okay, which song should I do? Because sure, hearing any song blasting at 1 a.m. in the morning to wake you up is probably going to piss you off, but the idea behind the 1 a.m. Dad Pisser Offers is that it has to be songs that would really piss off my dad. So I think about it and I go, you know what? I've got just the one. Trans-Siberian Orchestra's Carol of the Bells. You can look it up, but if you've never heard it before, it's arguably the most hardcore, boisterous Christmas song there is. It starts off kind of gentle. It's like kind of ominous, and then it goes bum 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 bum, and from there it just cranks it all the way up to 11. So I get that song ready to go in my old trusty CD player / alarm clock thing, but then I think, well, is this Christmas or is this Christmas? I gotta wrap this thing like a present, stick it under the tree, and then I hide in a closet that night 2 minutes before 1 a.m. because otherwise they'll just come find me and tell me to turn it off. So at 1 a.m. I'm in that closet and it begins. They're maybe just sort of waking up, looking around like kind of wondering what's going on, and it just keeps on playing. And then I hear them come out and they're looking around trying to figure out what's going on. And I start hearing stuff getting thrown around. They're like, to heck with opening this thing. We'll just manhandle it around until either the CD pops out or the CD player breaks. Heck, we don't care at this point. We're not going to try to save it. And, well, the next morning when I came to see what had happened, yep, the CD player was tipped upside around, the package was sort of open, and that CD was halfway across the room. And just like that, the magic and excitement of Christmas was back. Now, my family thinks it's kind of funny looking back at it now, but they certainly didn't think it was funny at the time, and yes, I did apologize to all of them. Like a lot of you, the older I've gotten, the more I've been about giving gifts as opposed to receiving them. In fact, at this very moment, I got a gift I just sent out that's hot on its way to longtime viewer of the channel and my brother-in-law, Dan, whose birthday just so happens to fall right smack dab on Christmas Eve. So everybody say happy birthday, Dan. Now, as kids, giving gifts seems to be less of a thing, and the most obvious reason is because kids don't really have much money to be spending on gifts. Now, of course, every now and then you kind of get one of those thoughtful, creative gifts from a kid. For example, this card that I got from my niece here, this is one of my most favorite gifts I've ever received. But receiving a gift from a child is certainly not something you could expect. I mean, what are you going to do? Walk up to your niece or nephew and be like, hey, I didn't get a gift from you this year, you little cheapskate. I know that some families have an agreement that nobody buys gifts for the adults, just buy gifts for the kids because they can't buy gifts for themselves, not really in most cases. And yeah, sure, as an adult, it's kind of nice to have that freedom to more or less buy yourself what you want. As a kid, there's just a certain magic to being more limited and that unknown, that mystery, that anticipation of what you might get that just makes it such a big event when you do get those games. But with that being said, I'd be curious to hear your thoughts on getting games as a kid as opposed to now as an adult. And if you have kids of your own, are you a sugar daddy or sugar mama yourself and get them more games? Because hey, some of those games you could be playing yourself. So for that and anything else you might want to say, leave your comments down below. I will see you in the next video.
He's the retro bird, yeah, and he's talking about video games. He's